That's it. A bunch of wires taped to a shoebox. Laughter exploded in the school auditorium. Marcus's hands trembled as he clutched the small, fragile model, his science project, while standing on the stage. The model sputtered slightly, a small lead blinking on and off with a faint buzzing sound. Yo, is it supposed to make that noise? Or is it dying? Yelled Jason, the football team captain, triggering another round of cackles. The judges shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. One of them scribbled something on a notepad without looking up. Marcus's throat dried up. He glanced toward the back of the auditorium, searching for his mother. She was there, standing tall despite the whispers around her. Her eyes met his. She smiled, nodded slowly. That was all he needed. This isn't just wires taped to a shoebox, Marcus said, voice shaking but determined. It's a prototype for a low-cost Mars habitat thermal regulator. It uses recycled aluminum foil, thermoplastic, and a microcontroller I coded myself to simulate internal climate balance based on Martian atmospheric data. Silence. Then snickers. Jason stood up, mock saluting. A Martian shoebox. Ladies and gentlemen, more laughter. One of the judges, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat. Thank you, Marcus. We'll be in touch. As Marcus stepped off stage, shoulders heavy, he caught pieces of the other students' conversations. Should have built a volcano. At least that explodes. NASA's not hiring kids from Eastbrook anyway. Who brings a coding project to a science fair? Marcus kept walking. He didn't stop at the refreshment table. Didn't wait around for the participation certificate. He walked out into the cold night, clutching the box like it was a baby bird. Marcus, a voice called behind him. He turned. It was Mr. Jennings, his science teacher. Balding, glasses. Always smelled like coffee. Don't let them get to you, Mr. Jennings said, catching up. That project, you know, it's brilliant. Right? Doesn't matter if no one else thinks so. You built a real thermal regulator. Marcus, not a model. You ran simulations. That's engineering, not just science, I know, Marcus said, blinking fast. But no one else does. Mr. Jennings hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. Listen, my college roommate. He's with NASA now, Huntsville. If I email him your schematics, would that be okay with you? Marcus's eyes widened. Are you serious? Dead serious. You just need the right eyes on it. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He took apart his project again, redrew the schematics, polished his code. For the next 3 nights, he barely ate. His mother brought him sandwiches he didn't notice. 3 weeks later, an email came. The sender, Dr. Valerie Chung, NASA Internship Program Coordinator. Marcus, we reviewed your thermal regulation prototype with great interest. It aligns with several low-cost design studies we're exploring. We'd like to invite you to participate in our summer high school intern program at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Marcus blinked at the screen. His hands went numb. He screamed. His mother rushed into the room. What's wrong? They picked me. NASA picked me. Mom. She dropped her phone. Are you serious? He turned the screen to her. She put a hand over her mouth. I knew it. I knew it. Your father, he'd be so proud. Word got around school quickly. At first, nobody believed it. NASA, like the real NASA. He must have lied, probably some scam. But then the school made an announcement. Mr. Jennings beamed with pride. Let us congratulate sophomore Marcus Daniels on being accepted to the NASA High School Internship Program. In the hallway, students stared as Marcus passed. Some nodded. Others looked away. Jason was silent. He didn't say anything when Marcus walked by. During lunch, Jason approached him. Hey, man. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Jason scratched the back of his neck. So, sorry for clowning you at the fair. That was kind of messed up. Marcus said nothing. Jason continued. And I heard you're going to Alabama this summer. That's wild. NASA's in Houston too, but yeah, I'll be in Huntsville. Cool. Really cool. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But Marcus didn't care anymore. The summer came. Marcus stepped off The shuttle at Marshall, clutching a notebook filled with diagrams and dreams. Dr. Chung was there in person. You must be Marcus Daniels. I've been dying to meet the kid who turned household junk into Martian innovation. He blushed. It's just stuff I had lying around. That's how most of our best ideas start. Inside the facility, Marcus saw things he had only ever dreamed about: massive engines, zero-gravity simulations, towering 3D printers. He worked alongside real scientists, joined brainstorming sessions, even got to lead a presentation on low-budget habitat solutions. One day, during lunch, Dr. Chung sat beside him. You know, we're actually incorporating parts of your prototype into a classroom demonstration for incoming interns. Marcus choked on his sandwich. Wait, seriously? Absolutely. Your approach was elegant, impractical in some ways, sure, but you solved a thermal regulation issue with foil dot coating and duct tape. That's innovation. Marcus. The months passed like seconds. When the internship ended, Dr. Chung pulled him aside. Don't stop building. Don't stop asking questions. When you apply for college, use me as a reference. And Marcus, one day, I expect to see you back here as a colleague. Back at school, Marcus returned with a new sense of confidence. He wore the NASA hoodie they gave him with quiet pride. He didn't say much about the summer. He didn't need to. At the next science fair, he showed up with a new model. No shoebox this time. This one used 3D printed components, built-in sensors, and a fully coded interface. Jason didn't laugh this time. No one did. The judge panel included someone new, Dr. Valerie Chung, who had flown in for the day. When they announced the winner, it wasn't even close. Marcus Daniels. As the crowd clapped, he turned to his mom in the front row. She wiped away tears. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his room. On his desk, the old shoebox prototype. The foil was peeling, wires frayed. He smiled. He didn't throw it away, because that's where it started. The shoebox they laughed at. And now NASA was listening. The next morning, the entire town seemed different. Eastbrook had always been a place that dreams small, get good enough grades to get out, or just settle into what was already there. But Marcus was changing that. At school, the principal asked him to speak at the next assembly. I'm not a public speaker, Marcus said, adjusting his hoodie nervously. You're exactly the kind of speaker our students need, she replied. Your story, it matters. So, Friday came. The auditorium was packed. Students sat slouched in their chairs, scrolling through phones, whispering like always. But when Marcus stepped on stage, wearing a crisp white shirt and black slacks, holding nothing but a clicker and confidence, the room slowly fell quiet. Hi, he began. I'm Marcus Daniels. Some of you might remember my project from last year, the one with the shoebox. A few chuckles rippled. Yeah, that one, the one you laughed at. Some of you even booed. I don't blame you. It didn't look like much, but it worked. And this summer, that project got me into NASA. Silence again. He clicked, and a photo flashed on the projector. Him in a lab, pointing at a massive screen beside two engineers. I met scientists who didn't care where I came from. They didn't laugh when I said I wanted to solve Mars's thermal regulation problems. They listened because I had proof, because I didn't give up. He paused. Sometimes the world doesn't believe in you, but if you believe in yourself, and if you keep working, one day, they'll have no choice but to notice. The auditorium erupted in applause. This time, they stood. Even Jason clapped. Afterward, as students flooded the halls, several freshmen approached Marcus. Hey, can you look at my robot design? Do you think I could build a model like yours? I'm not good at science, but I want to try. He smiled at each of them, giving them advice, encouragement, something no one had given him when he started. Weeks passed. College letters arrived. Most kids prayed for safety schools. Marcus had bigger plans. He applied to MIT, Stanford, Caltech, and every application included a personal recommendation from Dr. Chung. When the acceptance emails rolled in, he barely reacted anymore. He had options, real ones. One afternoon, his mom came home holding a thick white envelope. "This one's from MIT," she said, trying not to let her voice tremble. Marcus opened it. "Congratulations. You have been accepted into the class of 2020 with a full scholarship." He stared at the paper for a long moment. Then he turned to his mother. "You don't have to work that double shift anymore." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't do it for nothing after all." "No," he said, hugging her. "You did it for everything." Before leaving for college, Marcus visited the middle school he once hated. He sat down in front of a group of seventh graders and placed his old project on the table. "Anyone know what this is?" A girl raised her hand. "A robot, a thermal regulator," he replied, "made with trash and time. I built this when I was your age." Everyone laughed. "But this project, it changed my life." He showed them his NASA ID badge. Their eyes widened. After the talk, a boy came up. "Do you think someone like me could build something like that?" "What do you mean, someone like you?" Marcus asked gently. "I mean, like, I don't have a computer or anything." Marcus smiled and knelt to eye level. "I didn't either. You don't need the best tools. Just use what you've got. And don't stop building." He left the project with the school. It was displayed in the hallway under a plaque that read, "Marcus Daniels, from Eastbrook to NASA." College was a new world. At MIT, Marcus struggled at first. He was surrounded by kids who had been coding since they were 5, who had gone to private schools with million-dollar science labs. His dorm roommate, Neil, scoffed at his homemade prototype. "You made that out of duct tape," he said during their first late-night conversation. Marcus nodded. Neil laughed. "Dude, that's insane, but, like, brilliant, no joke. You should teach a class on that." They became best friends. Freshman year passed. Marcus took on a research assistant position, co-authored a paper on thermodynamic stabilization in extraterrestrial habitats, and even got invited back to NASA during winter break. Dr. Chung greeted him with a hug. "You're not an intern anymore," she said, handing him a visitor badge labeled Research Contributor. He spent the next 2 weeks inside real Martian habitat simulations, applying his old design with upgraded materials. The team ran tests. His code worked. His logic was sound. A month later, NASA sent him a formal offer, full summer internship, plus stipend, housing, and mentorship under a senior engineer. Marcus's heart nearly stopped. He printed the email and framed it above his bed. Junior year. Marcus stood before a TEDx crowd this time. It wasn't just a high school auditorium. It was global. His topic, innovation from scarcity, how cardboard and code can change space travel. He ended his talk with the same shoebox, now cracked and yellowed with age. "I bring this with me everywhere," he told the crowd. "Not because it's advanced, but because it reminds me that brilliance doesn't come from fancy labs. It comes from belief." The audience gave a standing ovation. When the video went viral, Eastbrook held a parade in his honor. The mayor gave him a medal. Jason, now working as a mechanic, walked up to him in the crowd. "You were right," Jason said, grinning awkwardly. "We were idiots." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "We were kids." Later that night, he stood on the same stage where it all began, Eastbrook High's gym. He held the shoebox in one hand and a letter in the other. "I got accepted to the NASA Graduate Fellowship Program," he said. This time, the applause came from teachers, students, city officials, even strangers. "They laughed at my project," Marcus said, eyes burning with emotion. "But now they're listening." One afternoon in November, Marcus sat in a glass-walled lab overlooking the Charles River. Stacks of research papers covered his desk. He stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard, coding lines for an experimental life support system designed for long-duration lunar missions. But something was wrong. His prototype kept overheating during simulations. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Why won't you work?" Neil walked in, holding 2 coffees, still stuck. "Yeah, if I can't solve this thermal failure, the entire system crashes." Neil sat across from him. "You remember that shoebox project? You solved heat dissipation with foil and airflow tunnels made from plastic straws. Maybe the answer isn't more tech. Maybe it's less." Marcus blinked. "Wait." He opened the schematic again. "If I remove the carbon nanotube core and replace it with a passive regulation layer," Neil grinned. "Here we go." 3 hours later, the new simulation passed. No overheating, stable temperature, full oxygen cycling. Marcus high-fived Neil. "You're a genius." "No," Neil replied. "You are. I just reminded you who you've always been." That night, Marcus submitted the design to NASA's Open Call Student Innovations platform. 2 weeks later, he received an invitation to present the prototype at Johnson Space Center in Houston. He entered a large white room where some of the world's top aerospace engineers sat around a long table. Dr. Valerie Chung was there too. She smiled as he entered. "Welcome back, Mr. Daniels." He exhaled. "Thanks for having me." His presentation was sharp, every graph, every data point, backed by real simulations. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then a senior engineer stood up. "This system, it could save us billions in cooling costs on Artemis missions." Another said, "It's elegant. It doesn't over-engineer the solution. It respects the limits of space," Dr. Chung added. "And it was created by a kid from Eastbrook with duct tape in his blood." Laughter, then applause. After the session, one of the directors approached him. "Ever considered joining our research team full-time? I graduate in 4 months." Marcus replied. "Well," the director said, handing him a business card, "we'll be waiting." When Marcus returned to MIT, he found a letter slipped under his dorm room door. It had the NASA seal. Inside, a formal job offer. Full-time. Beginning the summer after graduation. Marcus didn't say anything. He just sat down, stared at the letter, and smiled. He called his mother that night. "Mom, I got it. The internship. No, the real thing. I'm going to work for NASA. For real." There was silence on the line. Then the sound of her crying. "I knew you would. I always knew." When graduation came, Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma. As he reached the edge, he looked out and saw Dr. Chung, Neil, Mr. Jennings, and his mother all standing. He held the diploma high, not for himself, for them. His first day at NASA was surreal. He wore a real badge this time, with a photo and a title, Thermal Systems Engineer. During orientation, the director who had recruited him gave him a tour. "You'll be helping with the Artemis III simulations." Marcus froze. "That's the next manned mission to the moon." "Exactly. And we need your system integrated into the lunar habitat modules." They led him into a chamber the size of a football field. Inside, mock-ups of lunar bases, rovers, airlocks. Marcus walked toward one of the modules. Hand brushing against the exterior, he turned to the director. This is real. I mean, I dreamed it, but it's real." The director nodded. "Every great dream starts somewhere." "Where did yours start?" Marcus smiled. "A shoebox, and a room full of people who didn't believe in me." The director chuckled. Marcus stood at the edge of the stage as the crowd continued to clap, his heart pounding. He couldn't believe how far he'd come. Just a few years ago, he was the shy kid carrying a shoebox while everyone laughed. Now he was the one everyone came to hear, to see, to learn from. But deep inside, Marcus never forgot what it felt like to be overlooked. That night, after the celebration, he sat on the porch of his childhood home. The stars shimmered above Eastbrook like they always had. But somehow, they felt closer now. His mother brought out 2 mugs of hot chocolate and sat beside him. "You remember when I told you your father would have been proud?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. I found something," she said, pulling a folded yellowed piece of paper from her pocket. "He wrote this a week before he passed. I kept it because I thought one day you'd be ready." Marcus took the note. His hands shook as he unfolded it. The handwriting was rough, but unmistakably his dad's. Dear Marcus, one day, someone will try to tell you that dreams like yours are too big for a boy from a small town. That space is for someone else. Don't you believe them? If anyone can reach the stars, it's you. Keep building, keep dreaming. I'll be watching. Love. Dad. Marcus stared at the words until his vision blurred. Why didn't you show me this before? He asked, voice breaking. Because I wanted you to find your way without needing anyone's permission, she said, wiping her eyes. But I never stopped believing in you. He leaned over and hugged her tightly. I'm going to make him proud. Mom, I swear, you already have. 2 months later, Marcus arrived at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. This time, not as a visitor, not as an intern, but as a fellow. He was part of a research group working on the Artemis mission support technologies, and his thermal regulator design had now been adapted into a test module for lunar application. His first day, he was introduced to Dr. Renee Solis, the lead systems engineer for lunar habitat design. I've heard about you, Marcus, Dr. Solis said, extending his hand. Shoebox kid. Right, Marcus laughed. That nickname's gonna follow me forever, isn't it? Only because it's legendary. You turned kitchen foil and duct tape into a working system. That's the spirit we need around here. Marcus was given a workspace beside some of the most advanced thinkers in the field. But even among geniuses, his ideas stood out. During a brainstorming session, when a problem arose about energy conservation under lunar eclipse conditions, Marcus proposed a decentralized thermal node network. Instead of using one centralized system that could fail, he explained, pointing at his whiteboard sketch, we create a mesh of microcontrollers managing temperature in real time. If one fails, others compensate. The room went quiet. Then Dr. Solis said, get this man a team. By week's end, Marcus was leading a mini team of grad students and engineers, some older than him. But they listened to him, respected him, because he had the rare mix of raw intelligence and creative humility. One night, working late, he got a message request on LinkedIn. Jason A. Banks. Hey man, you probably don't remember me. I used to go to Eastbrook. We were in the same science fair. I just wanted to say I've been following your story. You're inspiring. My little brother saw your TEDx talk. Now he wants to be an engineer. I'm trying to get my life on track. If you ever have time, I'd love to hear how you kept going. Marcus stared at the message. He did remember Jason. He remembered every joke, every time they laughed. But he also remembered how it felt to be alone. He typed back, of course I remember you. I'm glad you reached out. Let's talk. Anytime. By the time Marcus turned 25, he had co-authored 6 scientific papers, earned a patent for his micronode thermal design, and was offered a full-time role at NASA. But instead of accepting right away, he asked for a leave of 6 months. Everyone was stunned. Are you sure? Dr. Chung asked over a call. We're putting together the next lunar crew team. You'd be designing for real astronauts. I know, Marcus said, smiling, but I need to go home first. Back in Eastbrook, the high school had changed. There was a new lab, a new robotics club. Posters of Marcus hung in the hallway. He walked into Mr. Jennings' classroom one afternoon. Mr. Jennings looked up, startled. I'll be damned. Marcus grinned. Told you I'd be back. They hugged like father and son. Mr. Jennings gestured at the class of seniors. They've been reading your research. Some of them want to be you. I hope they want to be better, Marcus said. For the next months, Marcus taught workshops, helped build curriculum, mentored kids who didn't even know what NASA stood for before he made it matter. He gave talks at nearby towns. He helped secure a state grant to build a STEM innovation center in Eastbrook. And when it opened, the building bore his name. The Marcus Daniels Innovation Lab at the ribbon cutting. His mother stood beside him. You've changed this town, she whispered. No, Marcus replied. I just reminded it what it could be. He eventually returned to NASA, but this time with a mission bigger than himself. He wanted to launch a national initiative to fund under-resourced schools and give kids access to tools he never had. He partnered with nonprofits, led panels, and developed educational kits modeled after his original prototype. When Time magazine named him in their 30 under 30 in science, the headline read, "From Shoebox to Stars, Marcus Daniels is redesigning the future of space travel." But Marcus didn't care about the press. He cared about the messages he got every week. "My daughter saw your YouTube talk and wants to be an astronaut. We built your project in our classroom. Thank you for making it easy to follow. You made us believe science wasn't just for rich kids." One day, while walking past the old prototype now in a glass case at the Innovation Lab, he saw a boy standing there, about 10 years old. Thick glasses, messy hair, clutching a notebook. Marcus knelt beside him. "Hey, you like building things?" The boy nodded shyly. "Yeah, but people at school say I'm weird." Marcus smiled. "Good. Weird people build the future. You know what this is?" he asked, pointing to the box. The boy nodded again. "The Mars box. My teacher said you made it." "I did." Everyone laughed. Until they didn't. "Are you going to space?" the boy asked suddenly. Marcus paused. "Not yet, but one day. And maybe you will too." The boy's eyes lit up. As Marcus stood, the boy called out, "Wait." Marcus turned. "Can I build something with you someday?" He smiled. "I'm counting on it."